American Airlines grounding all U.S. flights on Christmas Eve. Yikes. Definitely not good.
Nope.
No, definitely not what anyone wants to hear, especially with the holidays right around the corner. So you shared a couple of sources with me, a Reddit thread that's blowing up about this whole thing, and then a CNN article breaking it all down.
Right.
So let's dive in, figure out what happened, what it means for all of us who,
Yeah. Who fly.
yeah, rely on air travel.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people are stressed about this right now.
Absolutely. So, what caused this massive disruption?
Well, American Airlines is blaming a technical issue,
Mm-hmm.
but
But that doesn't really tell us much.
no, it doesn't. And digging a little deeper into that CNN article, we discovered the issue wasn't with the planes themselves.
Okay.
It was with their flight operations system, FOS for short.
FOS.
Yeah.
What is that, and why is it such a big deal?
So think of FOS like the central nervous system of the entire airline. So it's managing everything: flight plans, crew schedules, passenger details, baggage handling, you name it, it's FOS.
Wow.
When ACOS goes down, it's like the airline's brain just stops working. Everything grinds to a halt.
Okay, so that makes sense why a FOS malfunction would lead to such a huge, ground stop. But what would even cause FOS to go down like this?
Wow.
The Reddit thread is buzzing with theories, outdated APIs, software glitches.
Right.
Some folks are even joking, asking, did they try turning it off and on again?
Oh, the classic. You know what, though?
Yeah.
While those theories are out there,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think it's more likely a simple mistake or just a bug in the system
Okay.
than something more malicious like hackers.
Okay, so you're thinking more human error.
Exactly. Remember that saying, never attribute to malice?
Right. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity.
Randall's razor.
Right. Halen's razor. Exactly. And then you have to consider Clark's law, too, which states that any sufficiently advanced incompetence is indistinguishable from malice. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And with these systems being as complex as they are, even a seemingly small oversight can have huge consequences.
Yeah.
Like cascading consequences.
Right, right. Absolutely. So before we get too deep into the technical stuff, I want to talk about the people who are really affected by this, the passengers.
Of course. Yeah,
It's Christmas Eve. You're trying to get home.
absolutely.
Yeah.
This ground stop is impacting so many people. Imagine being stuck at the gate on Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
not knowing when or if you'll be able to get to your destination.
Absolutely.
The Reddit thread is full of stories like that. Passengers anxiously waiting, trying to rebook flights, worrying about missing holiday celebrations with their family and loved ones.
Yeah, one user on Reddit said they were stuck at the gate in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
I can't.
Christmas Eve, all ready to go, and it all just stops.
Yeah. It's a travel nightmare.
It's a holiday travel nightmare. And it's not just about the inconvenience. For some people, this could seriously impact their lives. Missed family gatherings, lost business opportunities, the money they're going to have to spend unexpectedly to, get where they need to go.
Exactly. It's a really stressful situation all around.
It is. And it reminds me, this isn't the first time this has happened. Remember the Southwest meltdown of 2022 when their system just couldn't handle a winter storm?
Yes,
Caused mass cancellations?
absolutely. And it brings up an important question.
Yeah.
Are these isolated incidents? Or are we looking at a larger issue with just outdated airline technology in general?
Right.
Because we rely on these complex systems for everything.
Yeah.
And when they fail, it has this ripple effect across the whole travel ecosystem.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if a glitch like this happened during a major weather event or a global health crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It would be so much worse.
it would be catastrophic.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if airlines are doing enough to keep their systems, up to date.
Right.
Resilient.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But let's not forget about the folks on the front lines dealing with all of this. The airport staff.
Yes.
They're the ones dealing with all the frustrated passengers.
Right. Trying to provide information, assistance in a situation that is largely out of their control.
Exactly.
I mean, reading through the Reddit thread, you see a lot of sympathy for the gate agents and the other airport employees.
Yeah. It's a good reminder to be kind, be patient, especially when you're dealing with people who are just doing their best in a tough spot.
Absolutely.
But back to FOS, we talked about the impact, but I want to make sure we understand what it does. You mentioned it handles everything from flight plans to baggage. Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Sure. So let's say you book a flight on American.
Okay.
From that moment on, FOS is working behind the scenes,
Hmm.
creating your flight plan, filing it with the FAA, optimizing the route for fuel efficiency, factoring in weather conditions, airspace restrictions. It's like a superpowered GPS for planes on a massive scale.
That's wild. But it's not just about getting the plane from point A to point B, right?
Now, not at all. FOS is also managing crew schedules, making sure pilots and flight attendants are assigned to the right flights. They're within their duty time limits. It handles passenger management too, from reservations and seat assignments to tracking special meal requests. All of this data is constantly being processed, coordinated by FOS.
So FOS going down, it's like a neurological problem for the entire airline. It just
Right.
disrupts all communication.
That's a great analogy. And when you think about how much data FOS is processing every second,
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing that things don't go wrong more often. But what's interesting is that this incident really exposes not just the complexity of FOS, but also how fragile it is. What backup systems are there when FOS goes down in the middle of a busy travel day like this?
Yeah. What happens when the system that manages everything suddenly stops working? Do airlines have a backup plan for this kind of thing?
Right.
We'll have to explore that. But for now, let's look at how this has been resolved.
So both the CNN article and the Reddit thread are confirming that the ground stop was lifted within a few hours. Flights are back in the air, which is a huge relief for everyone.
That is great news. But I'm guessing the journey isn't over yet.
Oh, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. While the planes are back in the air, we can expect delays and downstream disruptions. Think of it like a traffic jam. Even after the initial blockage is cleared, it takes time for things to get back to normal.
Yeah. It's going to take a while to unsnarl everything.
Yeah.
And the Reddit thread, people are describing it as a calm before the storm kind of feeling.
Right.
People are relieved that flights are taking off again, but they're bracing for the inevitable delays and the disruptions, especially as we get closer to Christmas Eve.
Especially with the holidays. Absolutely.
Yeah, holiday travel pressure.
Yeah, the ripple effects of this ground stop are going to be felt for a while. I mean, one delayed flight can lead to missed connections, crew timeouts, and then that just creates this chain reaction.
Yeah, domino effect.
Exactly. And you're dealing with thousands of flights across the country during the busiest travel season of the year. I mean, those problems, they can really snowball.
Absolutely. And it makes me think about how much we rely on technology working perfectly in other parts of our lives, too. Is this just an airline issue, or are there other industries where a tech glitch like this could have this huge impact?
That's a great question. It makes you think about how interconnected everything is in our modern world. You think about financial systems, power grids, healthcare networks. All of these rely on complex software, interconnected systems. A glitch in any one of these
Yeah.
could have huge consequences.
Yeah, that's a little scary to think about.
It is.
But going back to the airlines, it does seem like they're particularly vulnerable to these kinds of disruptions. What makes them so susceptible to these glitches?
Well, part of it's just the sheer scale and complexity of what they do. I mean, they're managing thousands of flights every day, coordinating aircraft, crews, passengers, baggage across vast distances.
Right.
Any little hiccup in this web can have a domino effect.
Okay, so the complexity is part of it. But is that all? Is there anything else at play?
Well, airlines often operate on really tight schedules
Okay.
and very, very thin profit margins. So this can sometimes lead to prioritizing efficiency over redundancy,
So cutting corners to save time and money.
potentially.
Yeah.
And that can make them more vulnerable to these kinds of disruptions. I mean, imagine if there were redundant systems in place for FOS, a plan B.
Right.
If one system goes down, the other one kicks in, prevents a complete shutdown.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like a perfect storm. You've got complexity, tight schedules, and maybe not enough focus on those backup systems.
Right.
We talked about the stress and frustration for passengers, but what about the impact on the folks who work for the airlines?
Yeah, you're right. We can't forget about them. The CNN article mentioned a lot of airline employees are working overtime to manage this whole thing. Gate agents dealing with frustrated passengers.
Right.
Customer service reps are fielding tons of calls. Flight crews are being rescheduled, rerouted. They're all under a lot of pressure right now.
Yeah. It sounds exhausting. And like we said earlier, a lot of them probably have their own travel plans that are being disrupted too.
Exactly.
The Reddit thread has a lot of comments praising the airline staff for their hard work and dedication.
I saw that too.
And I think rightfully so. Dealing with something like this can't be easy.
That would be so stressful.
And it highlights the need for airlines to really support their employees during times like this. Clear communication, flexible scheduling, access to resources.
Absolutely.
All of that can make a big difference
It can make a huge difference.
in helping them cope with all the stress.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to treating your employees with respect.
Yeah.
acknowledging that they're the ones on the front lines dealing with a situation that's not their fault.
Absolutely. And, investing in employee well-being, it's not just the right thing to do, but it leads to better customer service and a more resilient workforce.
Absolutely. So we talked about the impact, but what can airlines actually do to prevent this from happening again? Is it just a matter of spending a bunch of money and upgrading all their systems?
I don't think it's that simple.
What are your thoughts?
Upgrading systems is definitely part of it. They need to invest in modernizing their infrastructure,
Hmm.
making sure that their systems are robust, redundant, that they can handle the demands of modern travel.
Okay, so investing in better tech is a good place to start. But is that going to be enough?
It's a necessary step, but it's not the whole picture. It's not just about technology. It's about having backup plans and procedures in place for when things go wrong. And
Mhm.
things will go wrong,
Right.
no matter how good your technology is.
So having a plan B when the tech fails is crucial. What would that look like?
Okay, so think of it like a fire drill. You have the technology, you have the fire alarm, the sprinklers, all that. But you also need to know what to do if those systems fail.
Okay.
You know, you need to know the evacuation routes, communication protocols, designated meeting points.
Right.
So in the case of an airline, it's about having manual processes and backup systems that can be activated if the primary system goes down.
So if FOS goes down, what do they do?
Exactly. And just like a fire drill, it's not enough to just have it written down
Yeah.
somewhere. You need to practice it. You need to make sure that everyone knows what to do in an emergency.
Right. But could you really run a major airline manually if a system like FOS went down? For a long time.
I mean, wouldn't be easy,
No.
but having even basic backup procedures in place could really help mitigate the impact of a major outage. Think about how some airlines handled check-in and boarding during the outage.
Yeah.
They went back to manual processes, using paper tickets, handwritten boarding passes,
I saw pictures of that on Reddit. It
and
looked pretty chaotic.
it did, but it was effective. In a pinch.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but it's better than everything just stopping.
Right.
And it shows how important it is to have those fallback options available.
Okay, so modernizing the systems and having a backup plan, those are key. Is there anything else airlines can do to be more resilient?
Communication is another really important piece of this. During this ground stop, we saw kind of a mixed bag in terms of how airlines were communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Some airlines were really proactive, using social media to provide updates, answer questions. Others were much slower to respond, leaving passengers in the dark.
Yeah, I was following that Reddit thread, and it seemed like people were the most frustrated when they felt like they weren't being kept in the loop. Even if it's not the news you want to hear, knowing what's going on is better than radio silence.
Absolutely. Transparency and timely communication can go a long way in managing expectations, reducing stress during these disruptions. It's about treating passengers with respect, acknowledging the impact that the situation is having on them.
That's a really good point. It's about building trust, showing that you care.
Exactly.
But communication is not just about talking to the passengers, right?
Right. It's also about internal communication within the airline, making
Mhm.
sure everyone's on the same page. Information is flowing smoothly between different teams. That's critical.
So it's about breaking down those silos,
Yeah.
having everybody working together.
Exactly. A well-coordinated response requires clear communication across the entire organization.
Okay, so we've got upgrading systems, having backup plans, and communicating effectively. What about the government? What role do they play in all of this?
Yeah, that's an important aspect to consider. Government and regulatory agencies, like the FAA, they play a big role in setting safety standards, overseeing airline operations, and investigating incidents like this.
So they're the watchdogs, making sure the airlines are playing by the rules.
Precisely. And after a disruption like this, you can expect increased scrutiny from these agencies. They'll be looking into what caused it, did the airline follow proper procedures, what needs to change to prevent this from happening again.
So we might see new regulations.
Possibly. The goal is to keep air travel safe and reliable, and if this incident shows any weaknesses in regulations, I think we'll see changes made.
Well, that's good to know. But what about the people who are still dealing with all of this?
The passengers.
The passengers. They're the ones who are stuck dealing with the consequences.
They are.
A lot of people are still stranded, trying to rebook, figuring out how to get where they need to go, trying to salvage what's left of their holiday plans.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's tough because not everybody has the flexibility or the money to deal with this kind of upheaval.
That's a good point.
You know,
Yeah.
some folks are going to miss important family events. Some are going to lose money because of this.
That's true.
This is a good reminder that not everybody's affected equally when things like this happen.
You're right. It's so important for airlines to recognize that and provide the right support for passengers who are dealing with these hardships.
Yeah.
That could mean offering hotel accommodations, food vouchers, transportation.
And hopefully being flexible with rebooking and refunds.
Absolutely. Airlines need to go the extra mile to help passengers get through this. It's their responsibility to take care of them.
Yeah, especially when it's something that's totally out of the passenger's control.
Exactly.
So we've got a complicated situation here. Technology, human error, systemic issues, all affecting passengers and employees.
It is a lot.
What does this tell us about the big picture of air travel?
I think this incident really highlights how fragile the whole system is. Even in our technologically advanced world, things break.
Yeah.
And when they do, the consequences can be huge and disruptive.
It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with other industries.
Right.
We rely so much on these complex systems, and one little thing can go wrong and bring everything down.
Exactly. And I think that raises some important questions about our reliance on technology, the need for redundancy, and how important human factors are in managing these complex systems.
So where do we go from here? What does the future of air travel look like after all of this?
That's a really big question, and one I think we should explore more in the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But I do think it's safe to say this ground stop's going to have a lasting impact on the industry.
That's a great transition into our next segment. We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to discuss. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about something we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
The role of social media
Right.
in these kinds of events.
Yeah, it's amazing how social media has become this go-to source for breaking news and updates, especially in situations like this where there's not a lot of official information and people are just, scrambling for answers.
It's true. Like the Reddit thread that we've been talking about, people were posting real-time updates from all over, gate announcements, photos of the crowds, even sharing tips on how to navigate the mess.
Yeah, it's like having this network of citizen journalists giving you a firsthand look at what's happening.
It really is.
And for the people who are stuck in it,
Yeah,
social media can be a lifeline.
totally. I mean, it's a way to connect with other people who are going through the same thing.
Right.
Share information, resources, or just even vent.
Yeah, that's the
It kind of creates a sense of community.
It does.
Shared experience
Yeah.
in this really stressful time. And for the airlines themselves, social media can be a really powerful tool
It can.
for communication, damage control.
Yeah.
They can use it to keep people updated, answer questions, and hopefully mitigate some of the bad PR that comes with a situation like this.
Right.
But it's tricky because social media can backfire too, can it?
Oh, absolutely.
It can make things worse if it's not handled the right way. It can amplify the negative stuff and spread misinformation.
Yeah, airlines have to be really strategic and transparent with how they use social media in a crisis. Quick to respond to questions, acknowledge when they mess up,
Right.
make sure they're putting out accurate information.
Yeah. Because any little slip up, any inconsistency,
It goes viral.
it's everywhere. And that just makes things so much worse.
It does. Transparency and authenticity, those are key when you're dealing with social media during something like this.
Absolutely. But let's not forget that social media can also be a source of humor,
It can.
entertainment,
Absolutely.
even in stressful times. I mean, this Reddit thread is full of witty comments,
I saw that.
memes,
Yeah.
even some pretty impressive Die Hard references.
Right.
Given that we're talking about an airport shutting down on Christmas Eve.
It's incredible how people can find the humor in the toughest situations. It's how we cope.
Yeah.
It's how we connect with each other.
And sometimes a little laughter is exactly what you need to get through it.
Absolutely.
But as we wrap up our deep dive here, I want to bring it back to the big picture.
Okay.
This ground stop, it exposed some real vulnerabilities in air travel.
Definitely has.
Mhm.
It reminds us that even with all of our technology, things can and do go wrong. And when they do, it can affect a lot of people.
Yeah. And like we talked about earlier with other industries,
Right.
we're so reliant on these complex systems. One little thing goes wrong and it all falls apart.
Exactly.
So what are the big takeaways from this whole thing? And what does this mean for air travel going forward?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways for me is just how important it is for airlines to prioritize resilience and redundancy. Investing in technology is great, but they also need to have backup plans for when things go wrong. Because like I said before, things will go wrong.
And it's not just about the technology, right? We talked about that. Investing in employees, making sure there's clear communication, building a culture where everyone's ready for anything.
Exactly. The goal is to create a system that's efficient, yes, but also robust, adaptable,
Yeah.
able to handle unexpected challenges and still operate safely and smoothly.
Okay, so what about us, the passengers? Is there anything we can do to make this better?
I think the most important thing is just to be informed. Stay up to date on travel advisories, understand what your rights are as a passenger, and have a plan B, just in case.
Right. And be patient and kind to the airline staff. They
Yes.
are the ones dealing with all of this.
Absolutely. They're doing their best in a really tough situation. Remember, we're all in this together, and a little bit of kindness goes a long way.
Absolutely. So as we head into the new year, let's hope the airlines learn from this and make the changes they need to make to be more resilient and reliable.
I'm optimistic.
Hmm.
This has really brought the issue to light, and I think we'll see more focus on investing in technology, training, and processes that prioritize safety and keep passengers happy.
That's good to hear. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the American Airlines ground stop. Thanks for joining me on this journey. It's been great exploring the ins and outs of air travel with you.
It has.
Until next time, everyone, safe travels.
For